Welcome. I'm glad y'all could be with us tonight. We're going to go ahead and get started with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right there. Well, welcome to our City Commission meeting for December. I've got the agenda here, Commissioners. I'll note that we've got two absences. Commissioner Martin will not be with us tonight. She notified us she's got a special event, and Commissioner Satterfield feeling under the weather. So we hope that she will continue to feel better, but we do have a quorum, so we will continue with our agenda. I'm going to ask Commissioners if you have any objection to moving item number 5, special event application for Whiskey Run Smokies, up to the first item under new business, so that Mr. Levins can present to us, and then we'll continue on from there. Any objections to that? Okay. Thank you very much for that. Now we've got sort of a podium for people to bring their notes and speak on. So we're getting better with every meeting, so thanks to Don Hedrick for that suggestion. Okay, Commissioners, let's go to minutes. We've got 2 meetings to approve here. One is for our call commission meeting of November the 4th. And you've seen these minutes in advance, and so I'd ask you just to take one more quick look at that and see if there's anything that needs to be clarified, amended, or added to this call commission meeting on November the 4th. Okay, can I have a motion to approve these minutes?
I'll make the motion to approve.
I'll second.
Okay, I got a motion and a second. Anything needs clarifying in these minutes? Look good to me. Okay, all in favor of approving these minutes for November the 4th, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved for November the 4th. The next set of meeting minutes we have to take a look at is from our November the 19th commission meeting. And this was a whopper of a meeting, so it's a little bit lengthier than usual. And so we've had the minutes circulated, and I think we've got nearly a complete version here. So I'll give Commissioners just a minute to take a look at these minutes from our commission meeting on November the 19th. Okay. Can I get a motion to accept the minutes of the meeting from November the 19th?
I'll make a motion to accept the meeting minutes from November 19th.
Okay, got a motion. May I have a second?
I'll second.
And a motion and a second. I would like to make one adjustment to the section under public hearing, number 1. And I recall that there was, I know we can't put everything in the minutes, but I think this was discussed, and I think it's important to have it in there. City attorney addressed requirements of the zoning ordinance which could apply upon a change in permitted use. And so we've discussed quite a lot about the current zoning ordinance, particularly section B3. And I don't think we captured this, so my requested addition would be a sentence that goes along the lines of city attorney addressed requirements of the zoning ordinance which could apply upon a change in permitted use. Any other amendments or changes to the minutes? Okay. All in favor of approving these minutes as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved. And I'll just say to folks that attended that meeting, thank you very much for your patience as we work through quite an extensive agenda. Okay, the minutes are approved from that meeting. Next on our agenda, that brings us to the finance report. Interim City Manager, can you lead us through the finance report?
Okay, you'll go to your operating statement. Revenue's pretty good, and we're over budget by about 2% what we budgeted for the month. A little under some of the line items. You'll notice for the Christmas parade entry fees, it's $1,522. That doesn't reflect the other $270 for December. So we actually had a total of $1,792. Once you back out the $350 for the float price, we have $1,422 that we wrote a check to the Townsend Elementary School to donate. So going on to expenditures, over on page 2. Nothing really noteworthy, just a couple of things. If you'll see, the city attorney, we budgeted for about $250, and we did $5,670 for the month of November. And then down on planning and zoning, of course, the community plan. We had not budgeted for that for this fiscal year, so we had $7,000 go to that. Under city hall operations, our repair and maintenance, a lot of that is, a big part of that is the video recording. So we had an extra number. Going on to page 3. Nothing really noteworthy there. We're either, in all the departments, either right at budget or just a little over, not anything really egregious. And then on page 4, under Parks and Rec, just a little over, they had some promotion and advertising for Child Safety Day that they held. Christmas parade supplies was under what we budgeted. Bike trail maintenance is a little up because we do have the extra porta potty plus the handicap. And 2 of those are getting second weekly services because they're used quite a bit. But overall, we budgeted for a negative income of $32,235. We did negative $53,000. But we did have $41,000 for the note on the city hall. So in about 3 more years, we'll have it paid off. But overall, we're still good. We budgeted for an income of $61,000 year to date, and we're at $105,000. So still good overall.
Okay, thank you very much for that. So that we're still in the black, but quite a number. I'll just highlight, as you did now, the increase in fees for a city attorney. So we're utilizing the services of a city attorney at an increasing rate. So that's something I think we need to keep an eye on. All right. Let's see. Can we go ahead and do the charter of accounts?
Sure. General fund, we're right at about $743,000. Street fund is $205,600 or so. Drug fund's holding steady at $4,800, and accessibility fund is at $1,350.
All right, Commissioners, let me get a motion and a second, and then we'll get any clarifications that we need on the finance report. I have a motion to approve the finance report.
Make a motion to approve finance report.
I'll second.
See, we're efficient working together tonight. Okay, I've got a motion and a second. Commissioners, any questions for City Manager on the finance report? Any observations? Okay. All in favor of approving the finance report, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Opposed? Finance reports are approved. Thank you very much, City Manager. Let's move to Building and Codes report. We'll start off with the Building Inspector, Mr. Blair.
Thank
If you wouldn't mind coming to the microphone, I'm going to call you up.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Commissioners. It's lot month for us, really. We had 3 new building permits and issues. Somebody's doing it. This is good. We have 26 open building permits.
26 open building permits.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. Commissioners, any questions for the Building Inspector?
Not from me.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Blair. Mr. Ogle?
had 3 items this time. A couple of places that had debris outside, and I spoke with them or wrote them a letter, and they cleaned it up immediately. And we spoke with Terry Hadley about cleaning up logs and things back on 73. And there again, immediately, as soon as it quit raining, he was back there and cleaned it up, got it back on his property and out of the ditch.
Okay. Sounds good.
Thank you for doing that.
All right, thanks, Mr. Ogle. Commissioners, any questions for the Codes Enforcement Officer? Okay, thanks for the shout out, Mr. Jenkins. Let's move next to interim city manager report. Okay, nothing to report tonight. Okay, thank you very much. Chief Condi, police report.
I don't really have anything either. Parade was successful and rather abbreviated this year. It was a little bit shorter, it seemed like, and less attended for some reason, maybe the cold weather or something. But anyway, it's a success, and that's about it. Everything's running smooth, and hope everybody has a Merry Christmas.
Thanks, Chief. Commissioners, any questions for Chief Condi? Hearing none. Fire Department report. Chief Stallions indicated to me he will not be present tonight. No items to report. Which brings us down to the maintenance report. Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Mayor. Everything's going good like it should, but we have spent a little extra money of getting all the handrails repainted, looking a lot better and stuff. And really appreciate the extra help with our part-time guy, letting him come on a couple of days. So that's been really good. And we're on the last ditches down here to clean up, and that'll be it. We're doing pretty good. Everything's going well.
Okay, sounds good. Mr. Jones, I've got a question for you. I got a message from a citizen, Mr. Harry Cowan. He rides a scooter and rides on the bike trail and utilizes that. And he highlighted a number of things for me that, would make that better for him to do that. I think I shared that message with Commissioner Martin, Commissioner of Streets and Maintenance. If it hadn't made its way to you yet, I'd like to share that with you. I'll make sure that we share that. One of the things he mentioned was mud in the tunnel.
Yeah.
Particularly the one near the Arboretum and Riverwalk.
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll take a look at that. Yeah, some of it, the water drains from the road and stuff, it's leaking through, and it just creates a mess. But we did go at the lower end next to, I think, Big Valley, close to it, and cleaned it out.
Okay.
So we'll go and take a look at that, make sure it's all clean and taken care
Okay.
of.
And I'll make sure to get you that message. He had 2 or 3 other things,
Yeah.
and I thought they were all good suggestions.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioners, any questions on the maintenance report? Okay, that brings us down to the recreation report. Despite her illness, Commissioner Satterfield provided a report, and I'll read it out to y'all. Christmas parade went well. Our Grand Marshal was Appalachian Bear Rescue, and they also won first place in the float contest. Thank you to our fire department, police department, and maintenance department, and a Parks and Rec board member for all of their help in a very successful Christmas parade. So I would say shout out to all those folks that participated, and also to Commissioner Satterfield for her enduring work on the Christmas parade. The community gathering was a good time. Lots of folks showed up to fellowship, eat, hear some awesome music by both choirs. Then we prayed and lit the outside tree. Thank you to everyone who came and helped with that event. That was a tremendous event, community gathering. We had lots of good soups and chilies and all kinds of desserts. So
And the children's choir was quite entertaining.
the children's choir and Mr. Gann were fantastic. They did a good job, and the Townsend Community Choir, we're so grateful for them. They are quite polished and professional. I had only seen them recently on a YouTube video or something, so I was glad that they came in person. Next up, Commissioner Satterfield says we've had several engineering and architect firms reach out in regard to the RFQ for the Special People's Park. So far, no submissions, but getting a good amount of email and calls. asking for further questions and requesting information. Right now, we have sign-ups for, this is another item. Right now, we have sign-ups for a functional aging exercise class. There's 8 spots available. Must be 60 plus in age to sign up. I would qualify. The class will begin January 9th here at City Hall with an instructor, Penny McIntosh. The class is intended to help folks who need help with mobility, strength, and balance. Mondays and Thursdays, 10 a.m. for 6 weeks. This is a donation-based class, so not a set fee, but donation only. If you'd like to sign up, please let Commissioner Satterfield know, and she'll help you get signed up. And there's some further paperwork that's needed once you're signed up. Next item, we did not have regular scheduled meeting this month. I guess that's a correct board. We will reconvene in January. And I would also like for us to discuss having a grant writer that can help us with some of the grants we'd like to go for. We put a pause on a couple of them for now because we either need further training on how we can strengthen these grant applications, or we need someone who'd be willing to step in and help us with that process. Of course, the community plan completion will help strengthen our grant applications, but some aspects of a couple of grants we've seen are foreign to us, and the extra assistance or guidance would be very helpful and beneficial. Okay, that's the Parks and Rec report. Commissioner, any question that I could try to answer? Okay. All right, that's the recreation report. I will just add to this that we did receive an update on the grant that was put in together with Tremont to the EPA. We got an update this week that they had awarded a number of grant applications. I think the figure was something like 1.6 billion out of 2 billion had already been awarded. Our grant application was not reviewed in that batch, and so they would not have any further word on that it would roll over to the next administration. So that's the update on the grant application. Okay, let's see, that brings us to the Townsend Cove Gateway Alliance. Hey, Joe.
Hey, how are you all?
We're doing great.
Good. We don't really have much going on right now. We're kind of slow looking into the new year. We have been kind of meeting with some of the business owners and trying to work through and see how we can be supportive of them through the winter months. It's kind of hitting a lot of businesses hard, but other than that, we really don't have anything other than trying to look forward to the next year.
Okay.
I will say the Townsend Tigers, speaking of, won the championship for basketball. So yeah, they were undefeated this year, and so they're playing tonight as like an all-star game. So anyway, it
Terrific.
just reminded me of that when you were talking about the choir.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's what's sad. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Commissioners, any questions for Jewel from Townsend Cove Gateway Alliance? Thank you very much. All right, next up, community plan update, Mr. Hope.
Commissioners, this is weird.
Yeah.
How are everybody? We had a good meeting earlier, 5 o'clock. Just so everybody knows, we regularly meet prior to the commission meeting. Thank you to Commissioner Jenkins for making it out tonight, and Commissioner Hendrick's been there, Mayor. We appreciate everyone's input. We are just briefly checking boxes 1 and 2, headed on to the 3rd phase. We currently have our Gantt chart in motion. Looks like after the holidays, it'll be a lot of meat and potatoes work. We're discussing historical significance here in Townsend, what should be looked at, what should be reviewed. We're discussing a multitude of items that were in that presentation that you have in your packet tonight. We shall be pretty active the next 4 or 5 months with a lot of different things. But more importantly, we're moving on, I think, appropriately. We've done a lot of crowdsourcing with the vision statement. I think it really reflects the input of the community, all levels of the community. And there is a version of that. That is a draft vision statement you see in that
PowerPoint. It just says vision statement, but it is currently a draft. And then our third step, let me go over here. The next steps, obviously getting past this month, and then we will, I would say the document will be on the table at every meeting and be steadily reviewed. We've asked ETDB, the scrubbing document, to continue to provide like a red line process where we constantly see the changes and what's going on. We'll be considerably transparent with the two commissions, planning and yourselves, and probably looking at maybe a monthly workshop with everyone involved to make sure as we move forward that all we don't get to what we're trying to get away from is when we get to the end of a compiled document, there's not 10,000 edits or things to review, so we're going to try to do that monthly as much as we possibly can. That's currently where we're at.
All right. That's good, Mr. Hope. If you don't mind, I'm going to read the draft vision statement. I think we're wrapping up work on this. Oh, okay.
On the Gantt chart, you've got, not sub, but the super, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is in April. What do those numbers mean?
Yeah, so those are footnotes, notes for, currently there's, and I just found this out tonight, there's maybe 5 notes for that X.
Okay.
We are getting that mailed, I think it was emailed, and we're gonna make sure everybody gets it, but it wasn't accordingly correctly. So I just wanted that tonight. That, good question, thank you.
Superscripts. They're all little footnotes from ETDD explaining the Gantt chart, and that'll be available as soon as we have the PDF version.
Yeah. The one thing I'll just bring out, we made a lot of headway on historic preservation, but it looks like that corridor management might end up being its own project, maybe added in on the back end. If we keep, I don't think there's any way we can keep the corridor management in the same timeline as we will with this document. So on the recommendation of ETDD, I don't know why he had, he's probably going to end up removing that out of there. We'll work along that process separately. That's going to be with you,
Okay.
Good? Okay.
All right, now, I'm going to read this vision statement because I think, we want the vision statement to guide the work of the rest of the process for updating the community plan. So we've gotten a tremendous amount of input at this point, and this will it's not finalized yet. It won't be finalized until the whole plan is finalized, but this is enough, I think, to guide us. So I'm going to read this. We, the citizens, small business owners, and leaders of Townsend, cherish our small town charm and the natural beauty that surrounds us. We value clean water, clear air, mountain views, dark night skies, and the simple pleasures of life. Our vision is to protect this heritage while embracing thoughtful development that respects our environment and enhances our quality of life. We will preserve the peace and serenity that defines Townsend, safeguarding our pristine landscapes, clean water, pure air, and dark night skies. We will protect the natural habitats that enrich our lives, ensuring a balanced and thriving ecosystem for generations to come. We'll nurture a close-knit community where residents feel a strong sense of belonging, connection, and support. We'll welcome visitors to share in the beauty and tranquility of Townsend, inviting them to experience the peaceful side of the Spokies, responsibly and respectfully. We'll foster a vibrant local economy that supports homegrown businesses and provides opportunities for all to prosper. We'll embrace thoughtful and measured development that enhances our community without compromising its character or natural resources. We'll create infrastructure and amenities that benefit both residents and visitors, promoting accessibility, walkability, bikeability, and access to outdoor recreation. We'll celebrate our rich cultural heritage, honoring the ancient people of the Cove, the Cherokee, and the European settlers who shaped Townsend's history, showcasing their stories through museums, trails, and interpretive displays. We envision a future where Townsend remains a peaceful respite for residents and visitors, a base camp for recreational opportunities, and an enduring community for generations to come. So that's where we are. We'll continue to be guided. We'll continue to receive input on that vision as we finalize the update to the community.
A question, it talks about the dark night skies. I know we've seen some things about the dark sky initiative or something like that. Is that something that we need to be involved with and get that rolling?
Yeah, so I think that's something I've heard a lot about when we solicited feedback. What is a dark sky initiative, a dark sky policy? Is something that our residents, seem to value, so we probably ought to, have some workshop or something about that. I can remember a time when I was growing up, I'd look out the kitchen window and it was dark. You couldn't see nothing. Now you can see, lights over at Pigeon Forge and Wares Valley and Marable. That's okay, not much we can do about that. But in Townsend, we may want to be thoughtful about that. And so that's a good suggestion, Commissioner Hedrick. How are we going to tackle that? And I think that's what the community plan group will do. They'll try to foster some workshop or something along those lines to see what other communities have done and what can we do to adopt things for our plan that might help guide things like our light ordinances. So I'll take that as important feedback that we need to get busy on that. Okay. Commissioners, any other questions or reflections?
It says something about vision statement feedback. Where can people go to see this and do that?
Good question. We're probably going to have, we're going to leave this as a draft currently and probably get on the other side of the holidays. And when we start doing those workshops, I would say, based on some feedback from the commission and the mayor, I don't know how much feedback more we need, but it's definitely out. It was out in our meeting today and out in this meeting now. But I don't know about circulating a document or asking for feedback.
Mr. Hendricks asked about this QR code. Is that
Oh, no,
something
I don't know.
we're going to launch?
Oh, good question. I apologize if I was off track there. I don't have the QR code in my.
Okay, we'll have to come back to you on that one, Mr. Hedrick.
Was that copied and put in your packets?
That's in our package.
Is the sheet right after the vision statement, the draft vision
Is that not down on the website?
I don't know which one that is. I don't have that in
We can
my.
make sure we get put on the website.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, at a certain point, we have to sort of wrap up these phases so we can get on to the next phase. So it is a draft, and we'll
okay. I don't have that in my packet.
We'll
I
continue.
wasn't this guy, sorry.
have to receive feedback on it.
No, it's not it wasn't in our packets during the meeting.
Okay, sounds good. We'll follow up on that.
But yeah, that's on the, like Christina said, if that's on the website, then it's ready for feedback. I apologize. I wasn't aware that was out there.
The city website, we have a link to it.
Okay, let's keep moving. Next item on our agenda is a public hearing. This is a public hearing on ordinance that we've seen before. This is ordinance 343-324-1P, an ordinance amending the City of Townsend zoning map to rezone parcel 002.00, also known as 7511 Old Highway 73 of Blount County, Tennessee, tax map 096J, from B1 Tourist Business to B2 Neighborhood Business District. And this is on second reading. We've had a sign up requesting public input on this rezoning. We have had it once already, at our commission meeting. And I think this is up for second reading tonight. So you have the ordinance in your packets, commissioners. So I'm going to, unless you think of any further discussion on this about what it is, I'm going to open this up for a public hearing. Need any other discussion or?
I've got some questions, but I think it'll come after the
Okay.
public hearing.
All right, sounds good. So we're going to have a public hearing on this now. I'd like to open the public hearing at 7:31 p.m. Do we have anyone signed up to speak?
Somebody else?
Not to this item, agenda item, but we don't have anybody for this agenda item.
Okay, nobody signed up to speak. Mr. Aker, would you like to speak?
Yes, please. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
If you could just state your name and...
Sure, I'm Mike Aker, I own the property at 7511 Old Highway 73 with three of my first cousins who've given me permission to seek this rezoning. I believe all of you have the affidavits from them giving me permission to do this. The biggest reason why I'm asking for it to be done is that B2 zone gives me permission to, gives me a permitted use to have a single-family dwelling, where you're not allowed to have a single-family dwelling in the B1 zone that it's currently located in. And the written description of B2 in your zoning regulations matches by the entire street of Old Highway 73 through there being neighborhood business instead of tourism businesses like hotels and the things that are listed in B1. So since it matches the description and fits what I would like to be able to have permission to do on my property, that's why I'm seeking the rezoning. It is my understanding that there's a potential that the whole street is going to be considered for going to B2 since it matches the description that's in your zoning regs. I believe that does help preserve the appearance of Townsend as it is versus having hotels go up and down along the river like it's zoned currently. It was my mistake when I first got into this, when I was looking at the old map, there was two different colors that made it appear to be in B2 already, but it is specifically listed as B1, even though it's a different color on the map. So anyway, I would really like to encourage y'all to do that because I personally don't think anything along that river needs to be in B1, not just my lot, any of the lots. I don't think any of us want hotels springing up along that river. And all it takes is somebody to apply, to buy a piece of property and apply. And it would be really, really difficult to stop them since that's what the zoning regs say they're allowed to do. And I hope that you all will not just consider my application to do that, but that you will strongly consider rezoning the entire river corridor there into B2 to help protect Townsend. So that's what I have to say about that, and I hope you all support me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Aker. All right, any other public comment for this public hearing? Mr. Talley?
Hello, everybody. I'm Michael Talley. I'm the chairman of the Planning Commission, and I support this rezoning request as well. I think this is a good example, as Mr. Aker has pointed out, of a zone that would be perfect for the B2 district. It also affords him the ability to develop his single dwelling residence, as he mentioned. It does allow him an opportunity to also have a business at that location if he chooses to do so in the future. And like he said as well, along the old 73 there were several parcels which we identified as the Planning Commission as being those which would be applicable for possible rezoning in the future to B1 from B2 because of the location and the uses that are already on them that would be permitted, and it would just be a good fit. So I'd just like to say that I support that rezoning. Thank you.
Mr. Talley, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Do we have any B2 currently zoned in Townsend? Is there any parcel that's zoned B2?
No, there's not.
Would this be the first one?
Yes, it would.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right.
I know there was talk whenever the gallery went in, that would be like a perfect B2, but I don't think we ever did anything with that.
Yeah, that, the gallery, the permit was applied for while it was a B1, and it was put in as a B1 because that was the permitted use for it at the time, but that would be another example of a good use to be switched to B2.
Yeah, neighborhood business. Okay, public hearing, last call for any public comments. Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing at 7:38 p.m. Thank you all for your comments. Now, commissioners, before we get started on this motion, I'm going to quickly read, I think, a description of the B2 Neighborhood Business District. It is the intent of this district to establish business areas that are compatible with the surrounding residential neighborhoods. This district is envisioned for single-family residential uses, two-family residential uses, duplex, mixture of residential and business uses in one building, small and moderate-sized offices, personal and business services, and limited general retail businesses serving nearby residential neighborhoods and the general population of the city. All non-residential structures shall be compatible with nearby residential structures in terms of scale and appearance. The district regulations are intended to serve residential areas, discourage strict business development, and encourage walkable neighborhoods with grouping of uses in which parking and traffic congestion is reduced to a minimum. So, keeping that in mind and the comments that we received in the public hearing, I'd like to see if I can get a motion to approve ordinance 343-24-1P on second reading.
I make a motion to approve ordinance 343-24-1P.
And have a second.
I have some questions first, so do you want the questions first?
Well, if we can get it up for discussion.
Okay, so
Motion
we'll
and a
get
second.
it up for discussion.
Okay,
Okay, I'll second it to get it up for discussion.
okay. I've got a motion and a second. Now let's have some questions.
Okay. For years, I keep hearing about spot zoning. And here we're taking a parcel that's surrounded on each side by parcels that are zoned B1. And we're asking to make this one parcel B2. Isn't that spot zoning? And are we really sure we want to do that instead of rezoning that whole strip?
We can either rezone those strip, or I know a while ago, we were talking about if a house in a B1 burned down, they couldn't build back. And we did something where you could build back in a B1 if you had a, but I don't think it ever got, you put it here. But is there a way, I know there was talking about lesser things, so can we not add that you could put a house in B2, anything like that? I mean, that would be good, because you would want to encourage as many residences as you could be, and then that way.
Let me try to take each of those, because each of those comments is a little bit different. So Commissioner Jenkins, your point about spot zoning, I think we got some instruction on this from city attorney and city planner. And my understanding is if it's a compatible use, it wouldn't necessarily be spot zoning, even if it was the only one. We don't have, so I think it's okay from that perspective. Now I'm going to call on Mr. Talley again in his role as chair of the planning commission meeting. I've got a couple of questions for him. But right now we don't have a request from that whole neighborhood to rezone. Sometimes we might have a request from a whole neighborhood. But right now, we don't have that before us. We have this one request for this one parcel. Mr. Talley, Commissioner Jenkins is called into question the issue of the parcels on either side of this parcel. I'm pretty sure one of them is a B1. Is the one on the other side a residence, or is that a B1 too?
I believe all of them are B1s.
They're all
From the
B1s.
strawberry patch going on up the river.
There's no residential parcels in there?
I'd have to look at a map, but it's, I believe that the majority of them are B1 up until you get several parcels up there, maybe some residences before we get to the Townsend Shopping Center. And
I
we
think
have
there are
some
3
B1s.
parcels there that are zoned residential.
Yes, and then at the Eddie Dye's old dentist shop, that area was residential, and I think the shopping center and a couple other parcels are B1, and then I believe we get into, maybe we get into residence again behind the strip mall where the Ashley property is.
I'm not sure of that.
There's a duplex back there.
I'm looking at, this is a map from the windshield survey. And that right there, 3 parcels up, looks like it might be a residential. I think that the parcel we're talking about is right in here, and I think that's a residential. So my point is that there might be a B1 on one side and something residential, at least in close proximity.
That's not the way I saw the current zoning map. I saw 3 parcels on down the street
Okay,
that are residential.
okay.
But the uses on that street do appear to be residential.
Let's, that was my question, Mr. Chow, unless you want to have another.
Yeah, I believe the strawberry patch is B1, and then those few that are just up from it are B1 as well.
Commissioner Hedrick, your point about having residences in the business district, you're correct in your reflection that when the board, the planning commission, recommended the adoption of B3, we revised the language in all of the B1, B2, and B3. And it was at that time residences were taken out of the B1 and the B3. So the residences are only in the neighborhood business district as I described. Now, I share your thinking about having the ability to have residences. I'm really concerned that we want to encourage the ability of full-time residents in Townsend. And so I think we're going to come up to another item in our agenda where we'll be talking about some things that we could do to improve. But I take your point, and I think that is probably something we might want to go back and revisit. Other questions?
So how do you feel about trying to rezone the whole area instead of just this one parcel? I know we have to get a certain number of residents to be in favor of it. I don't think you have to get them all.
Yeah, I think, and I don't disagree that it's better to look at broader areas, and that's part of what we're going to do in the community plan. We would be looking at different options to, sort of, the city planner described as overlays, and what they would be sort of a future where you're headed. And then residents could kind of come to us and say, hey, we'd like for you to do this. Again, I don't think we have any, none of the residents have signaled to me that they are interested in being rezoned, and before we started down that track, I would want to, seek their opinion, either through the community plan process or through some sort of a targeted survey. But I don't disagree with the idea that you have to have cohesive areas throughout the city. But what's been described to me here does not seem like it's incompatible with the adjoining parcels, either their current use or how they're currently zoned. So I don't have any issues with this particular one based on what I understand. But in the future, if those folks wanted to come and say, hey, this is a neighborhood business district, then that might be something that could be useful.
And they're probably unaware, since they haven't had to do anything like this, or wanting to change anything about that. So
One of the things I'll just say is that we're trying to get better about letting folks know in terms of what's happening. So we've posted signs indicating there's a public hearing. So if you're in the neighborhood, you might drive by and see some sort of a sign hanging there. Maybe might get residents thinking about it. We've also, run it in the newspaper and let folks know. And then, of course, we've had great measures in terms of the community plan and letting people know that this is the kind of thing that we're thinking about. But sometimes you don't get focused on it unless somebody comes out to you and says, hey, somebody's thinking about your house. And so we may need to do some more targeted outreach, but I do think, that's what we're attempting to do and try to make sure that we've got cohesive areas across the city, Commissioner Jenkins, as you highlighted. So.
Okay.
Other questions? Mr. Aker, do you want to come back in?
Thank you, sir. So, a single piece of property being rezoned is not ever spot zoning unless you're trying to do something that is a non-conforming use. But I will tell you that any property owner down that street that already has their building intact the way they want it would probably be opposed of being moved from B1 to B2 because their property value, they no longer have big hotels capable of buying their house, tearing it down and making a hotel. I believe that you wouldn't want to see that happen, so I can understand why you would want to rezone that, but I don't think very many members of the public are going to come ask for their house to be rezoned. That would lower its potential for a big investor to come in and maybe build a hotel. I'm voluntarily lowering the value of my property so that I can put a house on it. But the people that have already got houses on their B1 properties probably wouldn't want to switch to B2 because then they lose the opportunity to sell to a big developer that wants to make a big massive hotel on the river in Townsend. And that's coming if y'all don't fix it.
Well, and I think you've highlighted part of our challenge and how do you get there? So you can have a vision, and I'm sorry, I'm digressing just a minute. We can have a vision for the city of Townsend, but how do you get there? How do you get people on board? That's right. And so part of what we're doing is working that through the community plan. And so the vision that we articulated tonight will help us, but there's challenges, and you've just articulated one of them. So I'd be grateful if we go ahead and get this one up for a vote. That way we continue our meeting. Thank you, Mr. Aker. Commissioners, any other discussion you'd like to have on this? Okay. I'll call the question. All in favor of ordinance 34324-1P, an ordinance amending the City of Townsend zoning map to rezone parcel A002.00, known as 7511 Old Highway 73 of Blount County, Tennessee, tax map 096J, from B1 tourist business to B2 neighborhood business district, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, none opposed. This ordinance is approved. Let's move to our next item. So I'm going to, with your agreement, I'm going to move up special event application for Whiskey Run Smokies. While I'm introducing this, I'd ask Mr. Jay Levels to come to the microphone to talk to us a little bit about this event. This special event application is for February the 9th, 2025. It's 6 a.m. to 12 p.m. Location, Company Distilling. Organizer, Mr. Jay Nevins. It is a run. I believe it's a 5K, 10K, and a marathon.
And a half.
A half marathon. And let me see, I'll say what I can see out of your application, then I'll turn it over to you. Anticipated attendance, 400 people. Let's see, we do have a route that's been provided to us. Mr. Nevins, would you like to tell us some more about your event?
Yes, sir. This is part of a multi-city series that we do,
And it's a 5K, 10K and a half. Typically, we do the half as 2 loops of the 10K, just to minimize the impact on the community and to lower our volunteer requirement. I know 2 months ago when I first applied, there was some concern about crossing the road from the start finish of the route. And we've decided to move everything over to the Heritage Center. We already made arrangements for that. And then the after party will be over at the company distilling. So nobody will be crossing the road without their own vehicle for protection.
Okay. Have you worked with Chief County on this one already?
We've had a short discussion about it, but we're not crossing any main roads, we're not crossing Wares Valley. Those were the concerns for 2 months ago, so I'm not sure if you have any more concerns.
Chief County, have you had a chance to look at this route? Any concerns?
I think it'll be fine now, as much as possible for the advance, and I don't see any issue with it.
Okay. So let me get a motion in a second. We'll get it up for discussion and then we'll have some
I'll make a
questions.
motion.
Okay. Got a motion in a second. Any questions or discussions?
I got a bunch of questions.
Yes, sir.
Is the route down the bike trail?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So when you get to, say, Tiger Drive down here, it's very difficult visibility at that point for cars to see pedestrians. Well, what kind of steps are we going to take to keep pedestrians safe at that location?
Well, we did a couple different things. We're starting, the beginning of the race starts before most of the traffic happens. So that was strategy number one. And then we're happy to put out some cones there, or even, a volunteer with a vest to make sure that those folks are safe.
Mr. Nevins, I was going to ask similar questions. How are you going to staff this? Do you have a number of volunteers? Will they be positioned along the route?
Yes, sir.
Provide guys. How many volunteers will you have?
Well, I think we anticipate doing 2 aid stations, so we'll need like 4 volunteers for that, and then we'll probably have another 4 to 8 volunteers just at the main road crossings.
Okay. Appreciate you pay attention to the one Commissioner Jenkins highlighted. How about markings? Make any plans to mark on the bike trail, the road, the sidewalk? Are you going to put down any markings?
Yes, sir. We use duct tape and some core signage, although, it'll probably just be mile markers because there's no actual turns. And then we sweep the course for, after the race for trash and back up the tape and the signs.
Okay.
We try to leave it cleaner than we find it.
Okay, so sort of leave no trace. You're not going to be using any spray paint or
No, sir.
chalk or nothing like that?
No, sir.
Okay, I like the sound of that.
It looks like your turnaround point's down from the reserve,
I believe so, yes. It's,
so you'll have somebody physically standing there to set your turnaround.
well, actually, we
Just-
typically put our aid stations, we'll have actually 2 turnarounds. We'll have one for the 5K and then one for the 10K. We normally put our aid stations right there, so there's no way to miss it. And it's unbelievable. I swear, I can say this because I'm a runner, but they easily lose half their IQ points when they're out there competing. But we now have 3-foot by 2-foot signs that says 5K turnaround here. So, but even then, we just had a race in Atlanta this past weekend, and people still missed it. It's pretty crazy.
So it's going to be on the bike trail?
Yes, sir.
And so you would anticipate closing the bike trail?
No, sir.
So if a citizen is just walking up and down the bike trail?
No
They
problem.
no problem?
Nope. Yep. And then also, I probably in my application was a little optimistic. I probably wouldn't, I guess I listed 400. I would be more surprised if we had more than 150 for the first year.
Yeah, that'd be important. So I'm
Yes,
going to
sir.
go ahead and make a note of that. 150 people, that'd be,
Yeah.
400 people would be a lot on the
Yeah.
bike trail.
Right now, we've got 2, so,
Okay.
and the event's approximately 2 months away.
Okay, 150.
Actually, I guess it's 6 weeks away.
Chief, still okay?
Yeah, we have several races during the year, course of the year here.
They utilize the bike
Yeah,
trail.
I'm not superstitious, so I won't knock on wood or anything, but I mean, we
The
never had a
Bigfoot
problem.
one has,
Yeah, I mean, it lasts for a short time and it's done, and it's, I mean, that as far as our draw here is the bike trail and to have stuff like that on it.
And we also have a 3.5 hour time limit.
I don't have an issue with it.
sorry, you're gonna have a Santa? It says you're gonna have Santa.
Oh, I mean, that might have been from our previous application.
Okay, it says whiskey themed 5K 10K half marathon featuring a real life Santa.
No, that was a typo on my part.
Okay.
I could have fixed. My apologies.
All right, commissioners, any further questions?
Your question about pedestrians on the bike trail and electric bikes on the bike trail, I can see the possibility of conflict there. And, there's a lot of early morning walkers on that trail. And most of them are like 50% of our population over 60. They're gonna, I'm just a little worried about conflict.
This is our 17th city, and we've never had an issue.
You're concerned about that. These are runners. I think they would be more pedestrian friendly than the large groups that would come for the Bigfoot Festival.
Okay.
There's a ton of people that come for that 5K,
Okay.
and I don't think we've had any problems with that one. I haven't heard anything.
Thank you.
Mr. Nevins, one of the advantages of having this process is we get to discuss it.
Sure.
But we also get to improve from year to year. So I think we've highlighted a number of things here that if you're approved, we probably want to take note of. We might want to put something out on our social media account or something so that people know that the race will be happening on the bike path so that they could at least be aware of that. So if this application is approved.
Yes, sir.
Okay, commissioners, any other questions? We've got to move on. Okay, all in favor of approving the whiskey run on February the 9th, 6 a.m. to 12 p.m. on the bike trail and company distilling as described, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, application is approved.
Thank you. And Commissioner Jenkins, can you tell me again the name of the road that you were most concerned
The
about?
one right here.
Oh, Tiger.
Tiger Drive.
Okay,
And
wonderful.
one reason that's highlighted to me is we had a death out here.
Oh, okay.
At this intersection, bicycles got killed. So I kind of worry about it. And if you look where the sidewalk comes down,
There's a
right
line.
there, it's really blind.
Okay.
For the motors.
But you need to do the other side too, where Campground Church is.
Right.
There's a lot of traffic there too.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you so much, and thank you for moving me up.
thanks, Mr. Davis. Okay, next item is Mr. Mike Akert. We'd like to welcome you back, Mr. Akert. You'd like to address the Board of Commissioners about amending the current zoning regulations that prohibit property owners from camping on their own property.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's no secret that I've been trying to prepare a way to stay on my property for a few months now. I've done a lot of research about it, and there are multiple communities and parks throughout the country that are allowing this, but still maintaining a pleasant appearance by limiting the types of motorhomes that they will permit on the pieces of property to Class A big rig luxury buses. That happens in multiple communities around the country. My main argument that I have for doing this, besides my long-term vested interest, is the fact that by being permitted to camp there, it helps preserve Townsend to meet the draft that we just read a little while ago about preserving the look of Townsend, because when I'm not there, it looks exactly the same way it does right now. And any building I build, somebody's got to look at it from now on. If I build a big building to park my motorhome inside, I have to raise the piece of property up 4 feet in order to put my building on, so that it will meet the FEMA requirements for the 100-year floodplain. So not only is my building going to be ugly all by itself, it's going to be stuck up in the air. And I would urge you all to look into limitations for how you can keep it not being Cousin Eddie in the Christmas Vacation movie coming in his hoopty, dumping his tanks on the ground, and we can keep it looking nice. I parked my motorhome there for a little while to try to see if there was any negative public feedback on the motorhome being parked there. It's a good looking bus, and I'm not wanting to live in the bus, but I would like to camp on the river, on the property that my grandparents gave me. And unlike some of the other arguments I've had, it is clearly in black and white that I'm not supposed to be able to do that. But you all have the authority to make it so that I could. And I'm asking you, as you consider this draft that was read today and everything that your public persona is about preserving Townsend, are we not better served by fixing this ordinance so that I'm not building something? I mean, literally and truly, if I get to park there, I don't want to build anything. And if the goal is to keep it looking like we want it to look, let's fix it. So I'm urging you all to consider changing the ordinance. Again, I can produce some various ordinances from other places that specify the types of vehicles that they will allow to do that. I think that you should include no rentals, that it must be the owner of the vehicle and the owner of the property that are staying there, so that we're not nobody's trying to put up a shanty RV on their lot and rent it out like a cabin. I don't think that's cool at all. But that can be crafted into the ordinance if you change it, and I think we all win if we do that. The whole community wins if we do that. And again, that's what I'm trying to make happen. So I put my septic in very recently. I got my permit from Blount County back in July, and I was holding off on doing it till we got approved for something. And well, the company that I ordered the septic tank from basically told me we were going to take it now or we were going to have a problem. So anyway, we put it in the ground. We put it in such a way that any one of the 3 things that I'm pondering doing with it, I can do it with it right where it is. So there's not a downside to that. Health inspector was there and approved it, and we covered it up. So I hope there's not a problem with that. And again, I just ask that you put some serious thought to doing what's right for the community rather than what it says in a little book. I think the community wins if I get to camp there and there's nothing to look at while I'm not staying there. So thank you all, appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Aker. I'll just reflect for folks, the section of the zoning ordinance that Mr. Aker's referring to is section 8-410. This is the general prohibition in Townsend for having RVs able to be parked and occupied anywhere. It's generally prohibited, so if folks want to take a look at the ordinance, it's 8-410 that you're looking at. There are some exceptions to this. And these exceptions, I'll tell you, generally are for storing. So if you have a motorhome, you can store it next to your house or your business, or I guess maybe it's behind your house or next to your house. So there are some exceptions in here, and of course, campers and RVs are allowed in RV parks as well. That's one of the exceptions as well. So, Mr. Aker, thank you for that reflection. And if folks want to take a look at section 8-410, if I hear about that, the way our ordinances, we can always be looking at them and improving it. It's one of our responsibilities, and if our community expresses interest in wanting to change an ordinance, there is a process for doing that. What we would normally do would be to hold a workshop on it and hear from the community about what they think about any needed changes to any section of our ordinance. If we have enough people that are interested, we would hold a workshop, and then we would use the feedback at that workshop to put it through the right process to the Planning Commission or the Board of Commissioners, however it's appropriate. So let's go to the next item.
So how do we request a workshop meeting?
Well, I think what you've done tonight, Mr. Aker, is put it on the radar. So you've expressed your interest. We have public input all the time. Our citizens tell us, you ought to do this, you ought to do that, you ought to think about that. And once it looks like there's critical mass to doing something, we'll hold a workshop. So this is the way to do it, and it'll be captured in our video from tonight. And so we'll listen to see if folks are interested in doing that and have any thoughts about that. And if there is interest in doing that, then we would move to a workshop and proceed from there.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you. Okay, Commissioners, let's move to the next item on our agenda. This is a letter from Planning Commission Chairman Michael Talley with a recommendation for the Board of Commissioners to reinstitute the Townsend zoning regulations to the original B1, B2 zoning prior to the B3 district being added, while the B3 section is being discussed and amended by the Planning Commission. Mr. Talley, before you make your remarks, I would like to make a couple of notations. Usually, this is something that came up and is a recommendation from the Planning Commission this past Thursday night. Typically, there is not enough time between the Planning Commission and a Board of Commissioners meeting to be able to have an item come this quickly. That's not usual. So commissioners usually have to have enough time to be able to review whatever the recommendation is from the Planning Commission. So it is a little bit unusual, and I do think we need to follow our processes. One of the things that we suffer from in Townsend is when we don't follow our processes. So if it's somebody submitting a site plan, they've got to have that site plan in 10 days. We don't have a specific recommendation for things coming to the Board of Commissioners, but typically commissioners have to have a sufficient amount of time to be able to look at something, and 10 days seems like a reasonable amount of time for me. So I do want to just make that notation tonight, because we are trying to follow good practices with our Board of Commissioners and with our Planning Commission. But we have agreed to entertain that on the agenda tonight to hear from Chairman Talley based on that recommendation that did come through the Planning Commission. So we'll hear from Chairman Talley, but in the future, we really need to make sure that if it's a recommendation from the Planning Commission, that we have sufficient time at the Board of Commissioners to be able to look at that before we have discussion.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor, I appreciate that. If that's going to be like the standard moving forward, I would recommend then that maybe we set our scheduled Planning Commission meeting and City Council meeting at least 10 days apart. So as the Planning Commission does make recommendations on other things, that they can be heard by the Planning Commission within the same month, instead of having to wait till the next month for their consideration. That might be something we want to look at going ahead. All right. I'll read this letter. Those of you who were at the Planning Commission, you heard it earlier, but this was a letter that I wrote as an individual to present to the Planning Commission for their consideration. Dear City Council members, I urge the city council to take immediate action to revert the current zoning ordinance back to the previous B1 and B2 district designations and reconsider the B3 district designation. A request was recently made by an applicant to rezone a property from B1 to B3 to accommodate the development of an RV campground. While the applicant met the requirements for the components of the zoning regulations, the rezoning request was ultimately denied. Given the challenges and limitations that have arisen from the B3 district, I recommend returning to the previous B1 and B2 districts for the following reasons. 1, the B3 district is currently unusable. The B3 district, as it stands, does not provide a viable zoning option for development. 2, concerns about future development. The denial of the rezoning request for the RV campground was a result of concerns about the broader types of businesses that could be developed under the B3 designation, leading to uncertainty in the planning process. 3, lack of a clear path forward. Currently, there is no clear or feasible path for the development of B3 businesses in Townsend under the existing ordinance. 5, need for reevaluation. It has been suggested that the B3 district, quote, needs to be looked at again in more detail, end quote. Any changes should align with the broader land use and the Townsend community plans, ensuring better integration with the city's vision. 5, lengthy process for reworking the B3 ordinance. Reworking the B3 ordinance would likely take several months of workshops and voting, causing delays in the rezoning process. 6, the past success of the B1 and B2 districts. The previous zoning system of the B1 and B2 districts functioned effectively and without significant conflicts, unlike the challenges we are currently facing with the B3 district. 7, efficiency in administrative services. The city has an obligation to provide timely and effective administrative services to the community. The existing B3 designation is proving inefficient in this regard. The failure to utilize the B3 district for the rezoning request demonstrates that the ordinance in its current form is not functional. Therefore, I recommend that the City Council take action at this regular meeting to remove the B3 district from the zoning regulations and re-implement the B1, B2 districts as previously used. The Planning Commission did adopt this as their sentiment to pass on to the council as their recommendation. And the real current concern is right now, if another applicant were to come forward with a similar request, it could be surmised that they would be met with the same outcome. Therefore, any campground, RV parks, or anything of that nature currently proposed for development in the city would ultimately be denied access to move forward. And with the long process of trying to figure out the concerns with the B3 district and how to rework it and reword it, and then the 2-month process of passing the vote again, it could be several months before we have functioning zoning in the city again. So that's the request, and I'm here for any questions or comments.
Thank you, Mr. Calley. I'll open up for commissioners' questions.
You were going to check the lawyer. What did you find out about BZA?
Yes, one of the things that came out of our meeting was what is the redress process. So if the Board of Commissioners denies the zoning appeal, is there a process? And the process would be to take it to the BZA. So the petitioner for a denial of rezoning could take that to the BZA.
So at the last meeting also, there was talking about conditional use permits. Is that something that, without getting it rezoned to B3, could that be something that could be taken to BZA? And
The Board of Zoning Appeals does have the ability to make a special exception.
Well, I understand that, and this notwithstanding is not in regards to that one specific thing. It's in regards to the fact that we don't have functioning zoning right now for any applicant that were to come before us for an RV or a campground, or maybe any other type of a B3 business permitted in those zones. So as I see it, we don't have functioning B3 zoning, and I don't see how it can work until we have some workshops, we look at it, we define the problems, we resolve those problems, and we implement it in a way that the commissioners feel comfortable with utilizing in its intended way.
Other questions for Mr. Talley or other discussion?
Thought about this all week, because, I was there when Mike read this, and I thought about it. And if we were gonna go back to B1 and B2, there would be things I'd want to change about it, so I just couldn't say, well, let's go back to it the way it was. For instance, I think maybe campgrounds need to be in their own zone. And that was one of the recommendations one of our citizens made, campgrounds need to be, and I'm gonna call it B4. So you have a zone that's B4 for campgrounds or overnight lodging. That way you don't have to worry about whether it's called a campground in your house or a zombie place, you just call it a generic thing. And so I kept thinking about that, and Mike made me think about that with his letter. So I think if we were gonna go back, we ought to do it in a thoughtful manner.
And if I may, I'll take it one step forward. I think, further, I think we need more zones than that. We need an amusement entertainment zone. Because in crafting this language, the first time out of the gate, we tried to use it and it didn't really work as well as we'd hoped to. But to lump campgrounds in with methadone clinics and roller coasters was a mistake. We need to differentiate these high-intensity business uses, I think, a little bit more clearly so they don't all get lumped in together and it creates such concern that it's no longer effective, that it's never going to be used or enacted. But we didn't have any difficulties with B1, B2 before. It worked as zoning since the city zoning was created. So I suggest in the interim, while we're working on the B2 or the B3, B4, B5, whatever, we revert back to a working system that has functioned in the past and has served us well. So we have functioning zoning while we get this sorted out the way that it's intended to work.
Any other questions for Mr. Talley?
But can someone go to the BZA and for the time being remain B1 and?
We're still waiting.
Special exceptions, so we did get guidance from city attorney, so the process, if rezoning appeal is denied, then the petitioner can request a special exception at the BZA. That is the process.
None for me.
Thank you, Mr. Talley.
Thank you.
I've got a few points that I'd like to reflect on with respect to this request, beyond the ones that I just made at the beginning. I do think we need to follow our processes. So if there is a desire to repeal the B3, which apparently this is what this letter is requesting, the process would be is it would start with a recommendation from the Planning Commission, which essentially this is a recommendation from the Planning Commission. And then it would need to be held on 2 hearings at the Board of Commissioners. I'm not sure that we can do something simultaneously. We could rescind it tonight and think about it. I think we need to follow the correct process. So if there is an intention or a desire to repeal the B3, which is what this asks for, it says recommend returning to the previous B1 and B2 districts, then it should follow the regular process. So that's my first point. My second point is that when the B3 was adopted, it was a way to obtain public input on a range of permitted uses. Before tonight, there was no B2 zoning in Townsend. There's never been a parcel zone B2 or B3. Every permitted use, including all the permitted uses that are currently listed in the B3, were in B1. And the process for moving forward with any of those permitted uses is to submit a site plan to the Planning Commission. Now, the Planning Commission has a very narrow remit. There's a checklist, and there are certain requirements in the zoning ordinance what you have to meet for a site plan. You don't get to weigh in on the planning commission if you like this use or if you don't like this use. It's a permitted use in B1. And every use was permitted in B1 prior to putting B3 in place. B3 invokes a public process for the rezoning. And that's where people get to weigh in on high-intensity uses. And so B3 is not tourist business, it's not neighborhood business district, but it's a highway business district. And so it's not that all of a sudden these uses were developed out of nowhere. They existed before. They were right there in the B1. The thing that's different now with the B3 is that when you request to get something rezoned, it invokes a public process. And we invoked that process, and people got to come and express their thoughts on that. Otherwise, the correct process is to submit a site plan. The site plan is reviewed by the Planning Commission, and if it's acceptable, the Planning Commission should accept it. Now, there's frustration because I think there's, some folks in our community that think the Planning Commission has the ability to reject something just because it's not a favor permitted use. But that's not the case. And so we have to be following our ordinances and following our processes. I don't disagree that we could use more zoning types. B4 might be a very good thing to have. If you look at the zoning code of the city of Maryville, you know how many zoning districts they have?
It's a lot. I looked at it this weekend.
26. Okay, now Townsend's a lot smaller. So I've heard the same argument that, well, we're only a fraction the size of Maryville, and so maybe 26 might be too many. We need as many as we need to get it right. And so if we need something special for RVs, then, that's what we ought to do. And there's a process for doing that, and as Chairman Talley identified, that process does take a little bit of time. But I think it is important that we have public input and that we do follow our processes. So those are my observations on a B3. And if we rescind the B3, it will go back to the way it was before, which is all these same permitted uses are permitted in a B1. And I think, as Commissioner Jenkins, as you highlighted, I wouldn't want to see it go back to the way it was before. So I think there are some challenges there.
And can I add something? If we were going to consider rescinding, we have to have an ordinance written that says we're going to rescind B3. We don't have an ordinance written.
I do have an ordinance written. I believe Gayla has it prepared. There's language that's actionable this evening.
Well, again, I would point out that commissioners need to be able to have their materials in advance. And so this is part of the challenge of having Planning Commission on Thursday and having City Council on Tuesday. And I don't disagree with the observation. We might be better to sort of set them apart a little bit so that we can work a little more efficiently.
But the second Thursday and the third Wednesday or third Tuesday are in the charter. You just can't arbitrarily change it.
Well, we can change the charter, but there's a process for that too.
Exactly.
So we can continue to improve and get better. And I think that's what we're trying to do. And with the community plan, what we'll be looking at is, do we need to have additional zoning types for certain areas of Townsend? And so I think there is a larger process underway that we hope to have completed by the end of the summer that will give us some better guidance in terms of types of zoning and business districts. So, Commissioners, any other questions? Commissioner Hedrick, anything else from you on this one? I think this is a sincere recommendation from the Planning Commission. I didn't vote for it, but the majority of the Planning Commission did vote for it.
Yeah, I was going to get it first Tuesday, and then Parks and Rec, second Tuesday, us, the third Tuesday, and everything on Tuesdays.
Well, we could consider that, and I appreciate you getting us started on that. Any other discussion on this? Thank you. Let's move to the next item on our agenda. This is ordinance 342-24-1P. Let me check these ordinance numbers. It looks like, no, this is 342-24-1P, very similar to the previous ordinance number. An ordinance amending the City of Townsend zoning regulations relative to grading and driveway access on first reading.
When do you accept public comments on that?
Well, we're going to take, well, Mr. Hedrick, you're correct. I skipped over the opportunity for public comments, so I'd be pleased to maybe take a pause here before we take this next one up and take public comments. So thank you very much for that. We'll take public input for items on the agenda. Thank you for calling my attention to that.
Now.
Yes, sir. Right now.
Thank you, Snake.
He missed it.
You got to keep an eye on me. Usually it's Commissioner Martin is watching me on the agenda, make sure I don't miss one.
I don't have any excuse not to be organized for that, for sure, because I have. Thank you, Mayor. This is pertaining to, what did you call it, an excavation driveway permit? Is that what it's called?
Grading and driveway access.
Okay. So, I was confused, I guess, didn't understand. I thought there was supposed to be some more discussion on this before it came to the council in the form of a first reading. I thought there was going to be some changes made, but evidently not. Is that correct?
I believe it was discussed at the Planning Commission and we made changes at the Planning Commission.
City Commission has not seen it, so any comments that we have will have to go back because we weren't involved in developing of it.
So, you can't have the first reading, is that what you're saying?
No, I think we can have the first reading unless there's changes that the commissioners want to make.
Okay.
There's a chance we can make those changes by amending it here, or if we think it needs more work, we send it back to the Planning Commission.
Okay, I thought you mentioned something in the meeting, something about what triggered when you were moving so much dirt or something to that effect. Is that correct?
Yeah, there was some.
And I didn't see anything in here pertaining to that. But nonetheless, I guess we need to go ahead. So I did hear you charge the building official, inspector, I guess it was.
Building inspector.
Yeah, to come up with something.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm not here to attack him, what the permit ties you down to as you go down through all the requirements in this ordinance. It refers back several times to a registered engineer, license somebody, whatever, and it requires presenting a lot of paperwork. Now, folks, this is not cheap when it comes to a building project. And you say, oh, well, it's commercial. Is it commercial? Well, even from the get-go, to get a residential lot on the market, it has to start through a developer. All these things required cost money, and it's going to be passed right on down to that person wanting to live here in Townsend. And I've heard this commission say several times, and you, Mayor, that we need more residents. Well, you sure can't get these residents if you keep adding on prices to what it costs to live here. My kids already told me that their kids, which is my grandkids, they're not lucky enough to inherit something here. You can't afford to live here.
So, is all these requirements practical? So, to begin with, what happened to the driveway permit? As I read through this, number 7, there's 4 lines. 4 lines contribute to the driveway permit. There's over 220 lines in this ordinance pertaining to other things. Take a look at that. Is that necessary? Okay. Let's go to item number 14. It speaks here of a root zone. My goodness. Why are we talking about a root zone for? I thought we was talking about a driveway cut permit. And I can understand that permit. I saw the gravel in the street after somebody cut a curb. And as I've watched it through the years, I've wondered, you know, people could use a little common sense when they put a culvert in. I see a lot of culverts put in this is not practical, period. Now, these are the types of things I think should be covered in an ordinance such as this. And it's not dwell on whether we're going to disturb the roots of a tree or something that's outside the building area. Then on number 2, or item 2 in, I guess it's section 14, it speaks of 25% clearance over 5 years. Would somebody tell me what that means? There again, Mr. Building Inspector, Mr. Blair, I'm not attacking you whatsoever. You got this from somewhere else, I expect.
Yeah, but you gotta read it all. There's, look at number 9 and 14, roadway grades including common driveways and all other roadway components shall not exceed 15% maximum grade. This is all in there to protect.
Well, I understand that, but it is, and now, I think I understand English well enough to see that says that you're not supposed to clear over 25% over 5 years. Is that what it says?
That's what it says.
Okay. And it says also to be approved by a registered engineer. Is that important? And then, as you go on down through it, buddy, we're going to have to sew this thing down in 7 days. I challenge you to get these vendors, subcontractors, come out in 7 days. They're not there. You can't hardly get anybody to come over to Townsend anymore. Tell you the truth, they don't want to do business in Townsend because it's so difficult. Another thing, no grading until 15 days before construction. Now tell me what that means. What kind of engineer are you?
I'm a registered professional engineer.
Is it not civil?
No, mechanical.
Yeah, what does that mean?
I'm sitting here thinking about it.
No grading until 15 days before construction.
That's in there so you don't have somebody come to a vacant lot, cut in a driveway, and then it sits there for 5 years.
Oh,
That's there to protect the community so you don't have a job site that's started and not finished. Any building permit, you have a expiration date, 365 days. It's the same concept.
I'm not convinced this is necessary. So, in the end, I think this is nothing but government overreach. It's not practical. So, why can't we just get back to the basics and use what the county's got? They deal with driveway permits and grading. You'll have to put up silt fences out there if you do.
Building a driveway Or is this for any, because, you know, you talk about 1 cubic feet, you have to have a permit for 1 cubic feet of move. What if our water line breaks and we have to go get a ditch witch, or we have to dig to find that water line? Are we supposed to get a permit for that?
No, that, Dawn made my point on that. This is not, we don't want to have 17 different applications for driveways, grading, all of that. This is one permit that covers all of that. It's a driveway and grading permit.
Okay.
It's just like the city of Maryville has in place. Any kind of excavation, you gotta apply for a permit. Now, if your water line breaks, it's emergency. I mean, you gotta have common sense too. We're not gonna go slap somebody with a fee for not getting a grading permit when their water line's broken, okay?
Well, we need to kind of change this, because with it saying excavation, grading, driveway, and clearing code, we need to just say driveways, and it only pertains to building your driveway and your development,
Then
because,
you're gonna end up with a whole lot more permit applications, you're gonna have a whole lot more processes. We're trying to cover it all under one permit, grading and driveway permit. Most of the time, your grading is involving a driveway. Or if you're doing some grading, you're just doing grading. If you're just doing a driveway, you're just doing driveway. Those two go hand in hand. So I don't want to have a grading permit and then you have to have another driveway permit, because then you end up, like Don says, you have 3 different applications. You don't need that. We're trying to simplify the process.
but your driveway, when you talk about your driveway curb cuts, there's nothing in here to give you a standard, you know, replace the curb, you know, if you're gonna have your aprons, give dimensions for your aprons, your width, your driveway widths, you know, if you've got your business, it needs to be certain widths and all this other
That's part of
things.
the application process. It's just like if you come to me for a building permit. You're gonna tell me what you wanna do, and I'm gonna say, yes, this meets code, or no, it doesn't. It's the same concept. You come to me with a driveway, and I'm gonna tell you, yeah, you can do X, Y, and Z, or no, you can only do X and Z.
Well, what
It's the
if-
same thing with
What about your excavation, where it talks about the 25% of your property in 5 years, you can't clear
the.
your
You know, it's
trees?
just like if somebody bought some, we don't have that much area around here that's wooded, but if you have a wooded area, it's just keeping somebody from coming in and clearing the whole 5 acres.
But if it's
all in
their
one lot.
5 acres and they wanna clear the trees, they can clear the
They
trees.
can, that's right. They
So,
can. And that's something that would have to go before the planning commission to approve. That would be over my head anyway.
and your 2-to-1 slopes, depending on your soil, 15 feet, I mean, you've gotta look at this case that you're in.
Exactly. That's why the engineering would be required on something like that. If they can give you a 3-to-1 slope and at least the engineering, then it would be okay. I mean, it's not something that, that's one of them.
And then, in addition, planning schedule for replanting of all artificial slopes is required with the cashier's check for 100% of all materials and labor costs associated with the replanting activities.
Yeah, that's just something that I left in there because the municipality we took this from had mountain regions like this as well.
Just out of curiosity, what was the municipality you took this from?
Well, Gatlinburg, city of Gatlinburg.
Just like minimum widths, your minimum grades that you've got 15%. I know you can't always have like an 8% slope around here, but we need to have set standards included in here for
You're making
the,
a point. You can't have it all like 8%. You know what I mean? You gotta be fluid with the whole thing. That's why the application process is there, is you apply for the permit. You tell me what you're gonna do. Can we do this or can we not do it?
And where would you go for the standard?
It would be an engineer.
no, but if we have a standard to give them, then the engineer just copies and pastes it, and everything's uniform, everybody looks the same, and it's like TDOT, you know, they have their standards.
I know I get it, yeah.
Yeah.
Is there, sometimes, you know, there's another code that we will refer to that has the standards in there, like the electrical code, or the plumbing code, and we just sort of refer to that, and that way, when you get a permit, you will go to the code. We don't have every, you know, specification in our code. Is there something like that for driveway?
RDC doesn't really have anything for grading. We'd have to dig into that.
And how extensive would our code have to be then if we wanted to specify each of these slopes and widths
I
and?
mean, it could be pretty generic, it could be pretty basic. We just set the standard for that. That's what she's saying, is we have to come up with the standard we want.
I wish you would speak up. You're kind of mumbling and we can't hear your
Yeah,
response.
well, problem is that the microphone's not long enough to go across the table.
If I take
Move the box beside it, maybe.
Yeah.
There you go.
There you go, how about now?
We have subdivision regulations, which refers to these raised cuts.
So would you use the subdivision regulations? Could you use this permit and then interpret it?
Yeah, everything.
Next to the
everything would
subdivision.
meet the city, everything would meet the city ordinances that we have in place. That's the whole point behind the application process. It's
Why
just
can't
like
you
creating
approve
an
it?
application to the planning commission. You've got to apply, the planning commission reviews it and says, yes, you can, or no, you can't. It's the same concept. It's just like a building permit.
Mr. Jenkins, this was recommended from the planning commission.
Yes.
Was this unanimous recommendation? It was not?
I don't believe it was.
I
I don't
believe it was.
remember for sure.
I believe it was unanimous.
I was recalling that it might have been a unanimous recommendation from the planning.
I think Don's made some good points, though. And I think Becky's got some good
Yeah.
I'd be
insight.
glad to review it, add, take away, whatever you get. We'll be glad to.
That would be my sense, would be to take the feedback tonight and improve it another step. Now, I do think this is important. Because we wake up some morning and somebody's decided they're gonna cut a curve in the city, and the next thing you know, you've got a driveway going on. And you've got mud and gravel and access that wasn't really planned or approved by anybody. Right now, we don't have any way to coordinate with TDOT. TDOT has told us that if they want us to have them let us know when they're gonna do a road cut permit, we have to have an ordinance in place. This is the mechanism to coordinate with TDOT. If we have something in place, they'll let us know. If we don't have anything in place, then there's no good mechanism to coordinate with TDOT. So I'm encouraged that we've gotten this far on it. I think it's pretty close, but I think there's a real need for it, and it does need to be fit for purpose. I take the point that, when we look at a model from another community, we have to make it fit for Townsend. And so, if there's things that we can do to improve it, I do think we need to make it streamlined so it's not overly onerous. So I take the point, you could have one application that fits all, but then if you don't have enough standards to point to, then that makes it, difficult for somebody to prepare an application. Sensitive to the requirements for engineering certificates and things like that, so that, we, can keep it, fit for purpose. But we do need this. We do need this in towns. People driving up and down the road, they never know when somebody's gonna cut the curb, and there you go. So, and we do need to be able to coordinate with TDOT, and they have told me that this is the mechanism that they need to be able to coordinate with us. And so I would encourage you to go ahead and take the feedback from tonight and bring it back.
I want it to work for everybody.
Yeah.
I'm not in a hurry, so.
Commissioner Jenkins, Commissioner Hedrick, is that consistent with your guidance on this?
I can try to get you some additional stuff.
Yeah, that sounds great.
But I'll say this in the future. Things that come to the Board of Commissioners, I know the Planning Commission does, and then they send it to us, and we're talking about getting things done in a timely manner. If that's something that anybody that's going to be involved in the decision-making process and giving inputs, if we could be involved through the whole process, that way we could get it all worked out and then move it on and everything be good instead of coming to us, having comments and having to send it back.
Yeah,
That would streamline things
I
a
think
lot.
the process is, sometimes we need to have a joint workshop or a joint meeting. Other times, I think we can give it a try and it will work. In this case, it sounds like there's no more work to be done. And, but I think it's pretty close as it is. I think the building inspector will address the feedback that he got tonight. I'd be willing to see it back again without it going back to the planning commission. Would you all be willing to do that? Or do you feel like you want to send it back to the planning commission?
I think we need Becky's insight, and however we get that, do we do that with a workshop? Do we do it by sending it back to the planning commission and having her be a special guest to the planning commission?
Why don't, Commissioner Hedrick, why don't you just provide your feedback to building inspector and let him revise it? And we'll take into account the feedback that we received tonight.
But then also the public's feedback too, their concerns and their.
The public's feedback that we heard during the time that we had public input on it. So we need to keep moving on with our agenda,
So since my name was brought up because I put a septic system on my piece of property, I would like to remind you that the people that own the property are supposed to actually own the property. If you need a driveway permit because you need the revenue or you need the TDOT to be aware of it and do all that, make a driveway permit just like Commissioner Hedges just said. That solves that problem. But all the BS about number of days, the number of trees and all that stuff has no business being done on anybody's private property ever. That's just absolutely government overreach. We have TDEC rules that we have to abide by, so if their driveway has a washout, TDEC trumps anything that you try to do anyway. Anything you do redundantly here or making your own stuff up is just government overreach. Let your citizens own their piece of property. I haven't always had money, but if I had a lot in Townsend and I wanted, and it was wooded and it would have a hill, I'd want to cut the curb and get my driveway permit and pay all the money to get the driving permit, but I might not be able to afford to build a building for years. And it's absurd for somebody to be paying for their piece of property that they want to build on someday and not be able to drive on it. And that's what this piece of paper does, and it's absurd. So I really want you all to take into consideration the power that you're wielding against the people when you do stuff like this. A driveway permit makes sense, but all the other crap doesn't make sense because TDEC takes care of that. If you have a washout, TDEC takes care of that. If you have a root problem, TDEC takes care of that. There isn't a reason for Townsend to have a redundant ordinance when TDEC already has rules in place that you have to abide by. Don't put any more rules on the people of Townsend just because you have the power to do so. Please don't do that, ever, for anything, whether it involves me and my septic tank or not. It doesn't have any place in Townsend. Gatlinburg's a totally different place than Townsend. Let's not do that, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Aker. So our job is to make sure that we respect the rights of property owners, but property owners sit within a community, and we have to make sure that what happens in the community helps the community to function, and that's our role here. So, okay, let's move on to the next item. This is ordinance number 344-24-1C, ordinance amending the FY 24-25 budget on first reading. Mr. City Manager, if you'd lead us through this ordinance.
It's a housekeeping ordinance. I have to do budget amendments on time, so we have the things that either were not appropriated or areas lines that are falling short. We need to adjust that. So you go down through there, it's pretty self-explanatory. We not budgeted for the revenue for the sales and capital outlay or for the community plan. And then there's just several expenditure items that under the police vehicle where the money was appropriated for that. So this is just bringing that in to put the numbers into the budget to reflect what we've appropriated money for.
Okay, thank you, City Manager. Let's get a motion and a second to get this up for discussion if I can.
Make a motion.
Okay,
I'll
can I have a
second.
Okay. Questions for City Manager on this budget amendment?
I have a question.
Sure.
Under police supplies, the original budget was $3,000, and the amended budget is $15,000. That seems like a big jump, so I'm curious if you can enlighten me.
Well, they've had some more expenditures that were not budgeted for this year, so this is just bringing it in line to project that that's what they'll use before June 30th. Because I think they're already, they did 11,000, what they've spent as of 3,000, so this is just bringing it.
Okay, now I understand.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But this is budget that we have. We're not getting it from other places. We're just shifting how we're using the budget that we
Correct.
allowed it
Yeah,
for.
it's just putting these numbers, I can put these numbers into the budget, because right now, like, if you look on your operating statement, under the community plan, that comes to mind, it'll show $7,000 for this month is what we spent, but then it'll show for the budget, there's 0. This will just be putting those numbers in and show that we appropriated that 90,000 to be spread out.
So we do our budget planning at the beginning of the year, and then we review it every month to see if we're on target and how things are working out. But we do have expenses that occur throughout the year, and so this is our way to amend the budget to be able to take into account those things that commissioners have already approved, so that we're have the most current and up-to-date budget. Is that accurate?
Correct. What they've always said in our finance class, percentage and pass it, it's wrong. So that's why we do a couple of amendments. We'll have another one in the spring, one to amend for probably attorney fees and any other items that fall short.
My sense is that this is a normal thing that communities do from time to time. I will take this opportunity to say that one of my priorities that hopefully we'll be talking about soon is to have a more intentional approach to our budget. And so being able to look at budget formulation at the beginning of the year and be able to look at budget execution throughout the year. And so when we get down to that item on the agenda, I'll just remind commissioners that I do have some thoughts about how we can improve our budget process. The perfect budget would be you can lay it all out at the beginning of the year and not have to make any amendments. And the closer you can get to that, the better you are in being able to manage your budget. But these are things that I think I recognize and understand all of these. I appreciate Commissioner Jenkins' question. That clarified for me too. Any other questions on this budget amendment? Okay. All in favor of adopting ordinance 344-24-1C, an ordinance amending the annual budget for the city of Townsend for the fiscal year 2024 to 2025, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, this ordinance is approved. Okay, that takes us down through our new business. And next item is unfinished business. And I'll take this opportunity to come back to you all on the workshop on our priorities. I mentioned a while back, and I think I shared with commissioners some initial thinking about laying out a set of priorities for the next 2 years, or be a little less than 2 years now, but to try to be intentional about the things that we want to tackle, the types of ordinances that we want to do, the types of processes that we want to put in place. And so I'm going to try to see if we can set a date for this workshop on priorities. I'm also interested in holding a special call meeting. I think it would be a short one, but the purpose of this special call meeting would be to review language to amend the city charter to be able to have the city council have a greater role in approving the planning commissioners. Right now, the planning commissioners are the recommendation of the mayor, and I committed to you all that I would put forward some sort of a language that would amend our city charter to be able to have those positions approved by the city council. BZA is already approved by the city council. The other topic on that special call meeting would be to decide on nominations to the planning commission. We have a vacancy there, and also to the BZA. We have 2 vacancies there. So at this special call meeting, we would review the language to amend the city charter. That will take a little time following our processes on first and second reading. But at that meeting, we could identify those representatives for the Planning Commission and for the Board of Zoning Appeals. And what I would commit to doing ahead of that meeting is to make those folks available to commissioners who have expressed interest in those positions and highlighting their qualifications. So, commissioners, could we identify perhaps Friday, January the 3rd, 6 p.m.? I recognize that we've got 2 commissioners not here, but I think we have heard provisionally from at least one of them that might work. And what we would do is we would follow our usual processes, advertise this in the paper and let folks know. So this would be Friday, January the 3rd, 6 p.m. Okay, so it's, we can take note in the minutes that 3 commissioners are confirmed, myself included, for a special called meeting and a workshop on priorities, January the 3rd. And of course, these will be open to the public as well. Okay, that brings us down to next item on our agenda, public input or anything not on the agenda. We're just now eclipsing 2 hours for better than last month. So, any additional public input? Okay, seeing none. Any other business, commissioners, that you'd like to raise at this time? Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll definitely second that.
Okay, motion and second. All in favor of adjourning our meeting, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Our meeting is adjourned.